Wow, it's a full room. Look at everybody. All right, let's get this party started. It's the last day. It's the last day of the AIGA Design Conference 2017. It's Saturday. We're here to talk about branding and music. See, I'm Bobby Barton. Thank you for a wonderful introduction from Debbie. I'm the founding partner of OCD, the original champions of design. We are a branding and design company based in New York City. And what's been so inspiring about this particular conference is the theme. The theme has been around connect and connections. That's why there's so many people in this room. That's why there's so many sessions happening at different times, and there's breaks where you can go and you can connect with each other, and you can network, and you can hopefully build some potential collaborations where you'll be connecting with your audiences and connecting with many, many people. And I'm glad that I've been able to connect with this gentleman to the right of me, Thomas Berger. So we're going to walk you through a little bit of what came out of that connection. You see, a short while ago, this happened. Yeah.
You've got mail.
I didn't want you to miss that. So, as things happen at OCD, every now and then we get a call from a client, and, they always say it like that. You get a call, but it's never like that. It's an email. And so we basically got this email, and I'm putting Thomas's business in the street here, but so we got this email, and it said, MTV branding project in the subject line. And then from there, it just basically says, we'd like to talk to you about some potential branding work. And we said, that's okay. That sounds pretty good. And we have this thing at OCD that we say is, instead of getting really excited and being all cocky about things, we always say, be humble. Act like you've been there before. I said, okay. Cool. Let me give Thomas a call. So we had a chance to talk, and it turns out that it was he wanted to talk about branding for the MTV Video Music Awards. And so like I said, we had to be humble and act like we've been here before. Now, after we were able to chat about the Video Music Awards, we went back and talked to the team about what we could potentially do. And it was very much about how we could collaborate to make something special, to make something exciting. And
All right, cool, thank you. That's a lot hipper than I am, but yeah, cool. So I didn't see that excitement until now. It may have changed our relationship if I knew that you were that excited. That's great. It's awesome. Yeah. So hello MTV. That's me, MTV. That's actually how I used to answer the phone. Hello MTV. And one day I was working on a Choose or Lose project with designer, illustrator Mirko Illich. And I said, hello, MTV. And he kind of scolded me. He said, Thomas, you're not MTV, you are Thomas. And he was right. That's me, I'm Thomas. So I'm not MTV, but MTV and the VMAs have played a big part in who I am as a creative professional and my journey as a creative. So I spent a large part of my career working on lots of different VMA campaigns to promote the show with some great partners along the way. So I'm a fan, as you can tell. I've always been a fan. I think that's the most important thing to be when you are working on a project or working for a brand, is to be a fan of that brand. So I'm a big fan of the VMAs, through the good, the bad, the beautiful, And through it all, the VMAs are really an amalgamation of music, design, creative expression, and it strives to be more than something than the sum of its parts, which is what makes it so challenging to actually create the VMA logo year over year. How do you actually create a logo for something that is so shapeless in a good way? And it takes on so much different life and aesthetic and transcends kind of one particular aesthetic. And it's kind of like a pastiche of current trends in pop culture most of the time. But how do you really kind of distill that into one brand? So sometimes, that mark is intrinsically tied to the actual creative of the show. Case in point, 2013 Brooklyn VMAs with Cause. Other times, when it's strongest, in my opinion, is when a logo feels contemporary in its simplicity, and it's just as powerful now as it was when it was created. So it's with that thinking that we kind of approached this year's VMAs. How can we take a step back and really try to create an identity that can transcend trends in pop culture and hopefully transcend year over year? Can we create a mark that can be agnostic to trend or theme without becoming sterile? Something that could serve as an annual identity. So as you may know, for MTV, that's a bit of a mindfuck. That's not really part of our DNA. We don't have a lot of, we're not into staying with one thing for too long. But that was our mission. And I think we chose the right person to help us fulfill that mission. So back to Bobby.
Okay, so now, at OCD, we have a bit of a process that we go through. And the way that we typically work is we might have myself and another designer or two work on a project. And in some cases, when it's a really special project, we'll approach it more like a SWAT team. And this was definitely that type of project because you saw some of our excitement around it, even though we were trying to hold it in. And so what we were able to do this particular time is we opened it up to the full office, and we were able to, everybody and the dog jump in on this project and start to think about how we could bring the Video Music Awards to life. But it was actually so much more than that, because as Thomas just showed, every year for over 30-something years, the VMAs has been very present and very topical and very relevant. And they've all been beautifully designed. And one of the things that we knew about the awards is that there's an incredible campaign that rolls out right before to get people excited about the big event. And so because of that, we wanted to make sure that everybody in the office was involved. We also have a process, as many of you do, where we start with research. And that research led us down that path of figuring out what had come before, where things began. There's actually an interesting story about the Moon Man. So we were trying to figure out the MTV logo, the Moon Man, which is the trophy that you get, the actual award itself. And so we started to do this research. And in this research, there's a pretty funny story where Manhattan designed the original MTV logo, and then back in '83, '84, they were asked to design a trophy for the Video Music Awards, for the first Video Music Awards. But as things happen, everything's done kind of last minute. You're still making ideas. You're still trying to figure things out. And the trophy was done and was prototyped, and it had this person in an astronaut suit, both feet on the ground, planted firmly on the moon. And when they looked at the prototype, they said, it's an astronaut. It needs to kind of be floating up a little bit. It needs to have like one leg and feel like it's one leg up in the air and feel like it's moving and has some motion and some levity. And so they recreated it and made these prototypes. And they only made 5, but the event had to go on. And so there's this funny story where they were present these trophies during the award show to the winners. So Diana Ross won that year. I think it was 1984. And Diana Ross got her trophy. But they only had 5, so they had to take these trophies back to be able to give them to the next winner, and then they would give them a real trophy later on. But Diana Ross was not happy with that, so she kept pulling their trophy, and there was this tugging match in the background. And that's research. We had to figure all of these different things out, because how would we then develop an identity for the Video Music Awards that's different than what has been done in the past, but also something that has longevity to be able to move forward in the future. And so that research led us to sync up with the strategy that Thomas just laid out for us of making sure that there's something at the heart of this Video Music Awards identity system that people could relate to. And that was this. Obviously, the Video Music Awards, right in the middle of it is MTV. And so we had to think about how we could make sure that MTV came to life and was the heart of everything that the Video Music Awards then did. And we knew if we could do that, then we could potentially pull off something that could live over time, that could live year after year. And so this is what we ended up coming up with. So we looked at the logo itself, the MTV logo, and we lost the shadow, and that was a big deal. You start tweaking some of these logos and people get upset. So first we pulled the shadow back and simplified it. But then we noticed that you have this strong M right in the center of the VMAs. And if you pull a piece of that, you get the V and you also get the A. And so when you put them all together, we came up with this symbol. Simple, straightforward, and it carried the DNA of MTV right at the core. And so then, with OCD, our name speaks for ourselves. We have to think about how this builds out into a lot of different places and is consistent, but also has some flexibility. And so starting with this mark, we then started to figure out how it could be flexible, how it could be dynamic, how we might be able to build this out so it's not just one particular symbol for now, but this might be able to be something that can evolve or be variable over time. Now, MTV, Manhattan Design, created one of the first, if not the first, variable logo ever. And now we see variable logos all the time, and we know now how hard they are to actually work with, but we also know that they bring something special to the table. And so thinking about that Moon Man and how we had to make sure that the Moon Man had this levity, we created this variability, this flexibility for this VMA logo. We created tons of colors, and we just threw everybody at it and made all types of stuff. And at it, we had to make sure that VMAs had MTV at the DNA.
I got loyalty, got royalty inside my DNA. Cocaine quarter piece, got war and peace inside my DNA.
So making sure that the DNA of MTV was there at the very beginning, then we could do a lot of different things with it. We could be flexible. It could be modular. It could move up and can move down. Now, these aren't things that you would necessarily see in the very first year, but these were things that you might see next year or the year after. So we had to test this and make sure that there was some variability and some flexibility and some longevity to this system, so that it could live with and without images, so that it could be a vessel, but also it could be a symbol. And then we created this identity system based on a grid so that it's very easy to then bring in copy and other information along with it. So the VMAs, not just this logo, but a much bigger system that then we had to figure out how we could develop a guideline system to make it very easy to be handed off, not just to the in-house creative team that Thomas was leading and overseeing, but also very important for how this could be handed out to different people all across the country that were making things to make this incredible event happen.
I can't believe you took the shadow off the logo. I'm just noticing that. I'm in so much trouble. No, but as you just saw, Bobby's work and the OCD that you put into it really helped us sell this mark up the chain. I've sold a lot of logos in my time at MTV, and Never has it been so easy to sell such a high-profile logo up the chain. I think when you presented it to me, I said something along the lines of, "That's it. We can go home now. We're done." Like, it felt so right, and just putting MTV at its core and owning the MTV brand inside of the VMAs, because really MTV and VMAs are one and the same. It was awesome, and again, I credit to you and the team for fleshing it out so convincingly that it really got everybody on board in a great way. So it's funny that he talks about Diana Ross and how things are a little fly-by-night at MTV. You'd think that would have changed by now, but it's not really. We still don't have our shit together totally, but basically, when we start creating for the marketing campaign for the VMAs, we really seldom have anything to grab onto. We don't know who the talent is. We don't know what the campaign's going to be. We may know the location, but we don't really know anything about the show. The show team really kind of keeps it close knit, and things are constantly changing. So to actually have a mark as a beacon to kind of create around was refreshing for once, and it really helped us see that the answer, like the mark, was kind of right in front of us and so simple to say, why didn't we think of that sooner? So for our marketing campaign, we wanted to own the icons and the heritage of the MTV brand in a new way. How do we do that in 2017? So that dream of traveling to new worlds, whether physically or metaphorically, is something that I think all of us as creatives can relate to. So we really kind of took that moment of the first MTV identity and brought the MTV brand back into everything VMAs for 2017. So here's a snapshot of that result.
See, that's what I'm talking about. Collaboration, that was incredible. And that was done by Thomas and his team. We had very little to do with that. All we did was hand over that set of elements, and then they brought it to life in so many different ways that we could have never imagined. And I love in what he just showed where the reference of the very first spot with the moon man placing the flag right there on the moon, and now it was a moon woman that was placing the flag in 2017, which being able to point that out was really special. And one of the fun parts about this is I asked Thomas, I said, can we go check out the show? And we're in New York, and I was like, hey, if we can get tickets, let me know. And so we'll see what we can do. And all of a sudden, I got another email, and it said, hey, we got you tickets. And so it happened to be in LA this year. And so we were able to go and check out things on the big night. And it was something special to be able to actually see everything in action, to be able to see big and small, to see Kendrick and Katie in front of our work, and to be able to see all of these different things was pretty breathtaking. And to see it come to life in such a powerful and present way. And with this, I thought back about what we had just done. And, it wasn't about trends. It wasn't about being cool, which for MTV, that's a pretty big deal. It wasn't about the me in this equation. It was about the us. It was about the collaboration. It was about the connection. It was about the Gen Xers. It was about the millennials. It was about the Gen Zers. It was about figuring out how to do something special that could withstand the test of time, something that was very much business-based and had been very present in all of our lives. I'm a child of the 80s. Ever since 1984, with these Video Music Awards have been around. 30 years later, how can we create something to help propel them into the future? And it all came back to making sure that MTV was part of the DNA of the identity and the system for the Video Music Awards. And that branding and that expansiveness is what inspired us and helped us to be able to do this work along with Thomas and be able to see it come to life in a way that made us very proud. So with that, we're going to sign off. Thank you.
Awesome. Beautiful, beautiful work. So I have a couple of questions. I want to ask some tactical questions. First of all, Thomas, did you send that email to more than one agency, that first email?
Yes.
And how many?
3.
And I'm assuming that they all were doing the same thing Bobby was doing back in their
I
studios.
think they may have been, yeah.
And so how did you make the decision to hire OCD, Original Champions of Design?
Well, originally, because I was a fan of the work.
But you had 3 agencies. So what made you decide to choose Bobby? Aside from his, obvious good looks and whatnot.
Well, yeah. Well, he grew a beard, which is helpful. No,
Pandering.
it was really the work and the approach. I think that.
So did you have each agency pitch an idea? Or did you make the decision after looking at all of their portfolios?
It was, well, each agency shared some executions. And I just felt like OCD, the way they thought about the work, it just felt above and beyond some of the other thinking. I think that a lot of them, speaking of pandering, I think a lot of them were trying to pander to what they thought MTV wanted it to be. And again, it felt like something that may have aesthetically looked good. Probably some of them are maybe too on trend. And I think I was looking for something that was a little more than an of the moment piece of design.
Yeah, it does feel like a classic design. I can't even imagine that you'd ever want to change it.
Right. We're hoping not to.
Good.
So, again, that's a battle for me to fight. But we're for the foreseeable future. We're hoping that this transcends year over year.
And Bobby, how many options did you show in that first phase?
Well, I showed how excited we were. And we did know going into it that it was a pitch, and we don't do pitches. We rarely do pitches.
So was it because it's MTV?
Well, if we do, we typically don't show work. It'll come in and we'll talk about the strategy and research. But this was one where when I talked with Thomas on the phone, he spoke about why he was reaching out to us. And I think the competitive nature of this also drove some of it. But we loved that he talked about needing an identity system that was agnostic and that could have a different, maybe focused campaign each year, but the system would be there to be a platform and to support it and to amplify it. And that was right up our alley. So from there, we just kind of doubled down on that. And we did do several variations. I mean, I can't remember how many there were, but as I mentioned, we opened it up to the whole team. So we went in there with a good amount of stuff. And what was great is when we were walking through it, like Thomas mentioned earlier, like he saw that direction and he was like, you know what, that's it. We're in a good place here. Why don't we we'll go and see, what we need to do to make this happen. So I thought that was something that was very special about working with Thomas, is he had a certain kind of eye for what he wanted.
When you're working in a pitch situation versus being the sole agency working on the solution, do you have a slightly different approach? Can you share some of what your competitive secrets might be to 600 people?
Well, like I said, we rarely do this, and so I
Now, you say rarely. I suspect I know the answer why, but people might be wanting to know why you don't.
Well, one, it just taxes resources, and it also it can devalue the process.
Was there a fee
There
for the
was a paid
pitch?
pitch,
Okay,
yeah,
good.
we don't, I don't do.
Okay, good,
paid
because
pitches.
I would be really upset if there wasn't one.
But I think mostly it's because of the time frame, and a lot of it is we want to understand the challenge. We want to understand the problem or the audience, and luckily we were able to come in this knowing a little bit, and then Thomas and his team were able to give us even more. So that's part of what kind of led us in this direction. But the question was there any secret to how we did this?
Or just a competitive approach?
We just put ourselves into it, and we did it in a way that for us was all about how can we make sure that this is something that it can be as relevant now as it will be in 10, 15 years. And if we do that, we know that MTV has to be at the core.
A lot of the work that you see now on sites like Brand New or The Die Line feature the final case studies with applications like videos and patterns and all kinds of collateral materials and so forth. When you pitched the work, did you include that type of media?
We did show. I don't think we had any video, which going into MTV was like a risk. But we did apply it to a lot of things, and we showed it with and without musicians, and we showed how it could work, and we really just made tons of stuff.
Yeah, and I would say that the curation of that presentation also was elevated. So that means just as much to me. Obviously, not as much as the mark, but what photography you're choosing, and if you're getting kind of the aesthetic. It all kind of came together, and again, that breadth of what he created to sell the mark made it in record time. As MTV goes, made it all the easier to kind of to really champion the mark up.
Now, you said something when you were presenting, Thomas. You said that the mark felt so right.
Right.
And it does. I mean, it's sort of, you look at it, you think, first amazing, then jealous, then admiring. Did you do any research to validate that feeling that it felt so right? Did you have to, you said you had to sell it up
Sure.
the chain of leadership. So talk about how you did that.
Well, I have a close relationship with the president of MTV and the CMO, so it didn't take a lot to, there's some trust there, which is helpful. I would not be comfortable like focus grouping a mark like that, or
How come?
For me, I feel like we have to trust our instincts as creatives, and I do believe in focus grouping for certain things, but I think if we're leading the charge, I think sometimes focus groups, we invite people to criticize when we bring them into that situation. So I prefer to really, I think best creative risks are when you go with your gut. So.
Last question. Did you have any disagreements along the way?
No, I think.
That's a maybe.
No. What I was going to say is I think Thomas was mainly the main person that we worked with, and he made it very easy. And if anything, it was like almost too easy in some ways. Like we talked with you and Catherine a couple of times when you were on paternity leave, and it was just like so great to be able to hop on the phone and go through when we were developing the guidelines. It was very easy. I think that there was maybe a couple of things that we had to tweak, but it was smooth.
I think our timelines are aggressive, so I think Bobby had to kick back sometimes and say, hey guys,
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know.
Relax.
That's really good to know.
We're of the we want it now mentality, which is
So what do you say when somebody says that to you? How do you get that? How do you push back in a way that gets you to having more time?
Well, you know, the gift of me going like this, it also has another version where I'm going like this, you know, and like, oh my God, what do we do? And I think I probably shot over email and I was like, hey, can we chat? And then we just talked about it. And I think it really came down to, okay, how much time do you need? Right. And I would say this, and they would say, okay, you have that. You know, and they would we would say, okay, we can get it by Friday. Say, okay, we need it by Tuesday. So it'd be a bit of a negotiation, but we'd at least push it a couple days or a couple hours more than where we were initially.
Sure, and quickly, as coming up as someone who's started as a logo designer and kind of worked my way up in the creative field, I need to school corporate sometimes on how long it takes to actually create something great, you know? So I'm usually getting leaned on to be like, we need that logo in 48 hours. So I may ask the question to Bobby, and then you know, once I see what's realistic with him, then I can go back and say X, Y, and Z. Here's why that's unrealistic. You know, obviously the old, you know, fast, good, you know, cheap.
Pick three. Pick two.
Right.
Pick
so.
one.
Yeah.
Right.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thomas
you.
Berger,
Thanks.
Senior Vice President at MTV, Bobby C. Martin, founder of OCD, Original Champions of Design.
Thank you.